Pink Panther 2, I've seen the poster on the bus.
Yeah.
That looks bad.
You're already not laughing. Well, look, it's a peculiar thing that they start the Pink Panther, with Steve Martin, took some staggering amount of money, despite the fact that I don't even think it was press screened. I think it was one of those movies that they kept away from the press for a long time. So now, the fact that it took a lot of money means we're going to get another one. So, story this time is Steve Martin once again stepping into the Pink Panther shoes. He is called in to be a member of a crack team who are on the trail of a thief. I think he's called the Tornado, and the Pink Panther is getting stolen, as is a whole bunch of other works of art. And it's people like Alfred Molina and Andy Garcia, and famous people. Here's a clip.
Good day. I am Inspector Chuckle of the French police.
Sono Vincenzo Rocara Squargialupi Brancaleoni.
And your name?
Vincenzo Rocara Squargialupi Brancaleoni.
Oh, that is your name. I thought you were ordering in Italian. Once again.
Vincenzo Rocara Squargialupi Brancaleoni.
Vincenzo Don Corleone.
I'm Kenji Matsudo.
Kinji Mazeltov.
Randall Pepperidge.
And Pepperidge. And this is my associate, Gilbert Ponton, and this is Nicole. Nicole is here to service your needs, so feel free to use her in any way you wish. And now, there's a crime scene waiting. Oh, excuse me. El Sino de Crimo.
That is not Italian, and I do speak English.
Oh, really? Prove it.
And all the problems are kind of inherent in that clip. I mean, the first one is that the French accent that he's doing isn't very funny, and it's a weird thing about him not saying his R's properly, because it's not that the French say R's like that. So it's a very odd joke about a French accent. It's quite easy to take the mickey out of the French accent. It's not hard, but it's a peculiar way to have gone with it. The second thing is that I tried to look at this as basically being aimed at a very, very young audience, because the thing with the Pink Panther movies is they were of hugely variable stock anyway. I mean, some of the Pink Panther movies were quite funny, but some of them were really, really terrible. The best one, of course, was Shot in the Dark, the second one, which, of course, was written by William Peter Blatty, who wrote The Exorcist, and I'm not being funny about this. It had a proper screenplay, proper jokes. It was actually taken vaguely from a stage play anyway, and so it was a proper film. And then a lot of the other ones were a lot less funny. There's a one with Alan Arkin, which is actually very odd. And then later on, they tried to revive it with, what's he called? Hey, I love you. Hey, Jackpot, Roberto Benigni.
Is it Roberto Benigni?
It's Roberto Benigni, yes. Yeah. And so it's not like there's a great high watermark that you're having to hit every time we're doing a Pink Panther movie, but there are certain things that you have to do. And the original Pink Panther movies didn't play to a completely kiddie audience. With this, the humour is so sort of people falling on their bottoms orientated that you think, okay, fine, well, in that case, it's playing to a younger audience. But as that clip noticed, there's a kind of weird sexual innuendo going on all the way through it, which they refer to in the census report. They give it a PG certificate, and they say that it is for mild sex reference and slapstick violence. They talk about the sex references in the Pink Panther 2 were felt to be limited to innuendo only and were infrequent. But the point is, if you're going to play to a very young audience, don't do the sort of innuendo smutty comedy which is inappropriate for that audience. And there's a whole subplot about Lily Tomlin being a PC cop who comes in to police political correctness, which is the setup for a lot of gags about Clouseau being leery. Now, in many of the, like for example, in A Shot in the Dark, the Clouseau character was, he was in love with a woman and it was quite lusty and bawdy, but that was never intended as a kids' movie. So the problem with this is they're not entirely sure who their audience is. Point number one. Point number two, at a slapstick level, it's not anything like as funny as it ought to be, particularly considering how good Steve Martin is at slapstick. There's one sequence when he has to dress up as a sort of singer-dancer and do a kind of flamenco-y thing. And, of course, if you know Steve Martin, if you've seen him on stage, he used to do brilliant tap dancing and banjo playing. He's a brilliant banjo player. And actually one of the things that he does do really well is physical slapstick comedy. Now, maybe he's too old to do it, but there was this weird thing about you've got Steve Martin, you put him on, the whole setup is he's got to be a song and dance man, and then he doesn't actually do anything with it. And there's another scene in which there's a rack of wine, you've probably seen this clip, in which this rack of wine falls over and he's catching these wine bottles. And it's like a juggling trick, except the wine bottles are so terribly CGI that there's no physicality to it. So, the French accent's not funny, the innuendo is out of place, the slapstick humour doesn't utilise what it should have there. So what are you left with? You're left with, well, there's no plot to speak of because it's not written as well as Shot in the Dark was, because it doesn't actually have any real plot to speak of. And now, I'd be lying if I told you I didn't laugh at all, because even in that clip, there's a little smirky moment when he says, I'm blah, 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 and he says, oh, and then your name. And that's kind of... But I mean, a couple of times I smirked, I tittered. I wasn't completely without laughter, and I was watching it thinking, if you had a 6-year-old or a 7-year-old, would they just laugh at the funny man falling over? In the same way as you'd laugh at the Chuckle Brothers on television, because, Chuckle Brothers... No, I'm sorry.
You don't laugh at the Chuckle Brothers.
You do.
I don't think you do.
You do.
I don't even kids laugh at that.
Yes, they do.
I don't think so.
Well, I'm sorry.
Kids that are well brought up.
Right. My kids have laughed at the Chuckle Brothers.
My point, yes.
Yeah, fine. So all I'm saying is, right, it's not, I mean, it's certainly not, it's not a Norbit, it's not one of those, it's not grotesquely, awfully offensive. It's just not doing any of the things that it ought to do, and it seems to be, it doesn't know who it's aimed at, and you just sit there thinking, I want to laugh now, please, can I just have a little laugh, a chuckle? What's that Woody Allen thing, which is, my wife left me on the grounds of insufficient laughter. Well, if you were married to the movie, you'd have the same issue.